I got a button that, when pressed, grants me 60 billion, but as a price, I'll be sent into a heart-wrenching novel to adventure. Me, let's take a gamble. A flash of white light, and I became the female lead in a tragedy, subjected to both physical and emotional torment by the male lead, destined to succumb to an incurable illness. I said, "You call this love?" Later, the male lead knelt at my feet, tears streaming down his face, asking, "Did you ever love me?" I wiped the tears from his chin and replied, "How could I not love you? My 60 billion. Chapter 1. If you had a button that, when pressed, would grant you 60 billion, but as a cost, you'd be sent into a tragedy to adventure, what would you choose? Clearly, my choice is to max it out. I'm pressing it all the way down. I've been the female lead in this tragedy for 6 months, but the male lead hasn't appeared yet. At this moment, I'm still a beloved rich girl. Once the male lead appears and we get married, my good days will be over. Laura, I heard Master Lu is back in the country. My best friend hugged her phone, her face filled with hope. From now on, after the bitterness comes the sweetness. Yes, everyone thinks so. As long as Augustine returns, I'll have truly reaped the rewards. We've been betrothed since childhood, and everyone thinks I'm just waiting for him. It's as if my life inherently needs a man to be complete. Not just Anna thinks so, but also my personal system. That's right. I'm bound to a 60 billion system, and only by completing all tasks can I get my 60 billion. The system is eager. The male lead is about to come back. Do you know the plot I told you? We have to make sure the male lead's affection for you reaches 100, and he must love you to the point of being unable to live without you. To this, I could only remain silent. According to the plot, I would become a mute, allowing the male lead and his poor first love to bully me. Facing the first love schemes, I would stand firm and silent. The male lead would love me and hate me at the same time, crazily insulting me for the sake of his first love. When I succumb to my illness and die, he would then go on to insult his first love like mad, and my greatest revenge on him would be to hide my illness, leaving him to suffer alone in this world, throwing money around in sorrow. It's hard to judge. All I can say is, full marks for the mental victory. I alone achieved a world where only I am hurt. As soon as I learned the plot, I underwent a full body checkup, started going to bed early, exercising, and rejected all bad habits. After all, health is the foundation of everything. I refuse to believe that he wouldn't love me while he's alive and would suddenly realize it when I'm gone. That's 60 billion. I must seize all the initiative for myself. Chapter 2. Just as the system had predicted, the male lead Augustine returned to the country, and he brought a woman with him, his first love, Gabriella. At my birthday party, Augustine and Gabriella attended together, completely disregarding the strange looks from others, turning me into a laughingstock in our circle. At this moment, Gabriella had just stepped out of Augustine's car. In the novel, I should have bitten my lip, holding back tears, enduring it all to gain Augustine's sympathy. But clearly, I had no intention of doing that. My marriage with Augustine is a business union, and my family background is even slightly better than his. With such a background, I have no need to rely on sympathy to achieve my goals. Facing the curious gazes of the guests, I adjusted my shawl, put on an appropriate smile, and walked up to Augustine. Augustine, long time no see. What gift did you bring me? If I'm not satisfied with your gift, I might just get mad at you. As his fiancé, I could certainly ask him directly. As for Gabriella beside him, I'm sorry, but in this situation, she didn't really have the right to speak. Seeing my demeanor, Augustine seemed a bit embarrassed and subtly distanced himself from Gabriella. I've been preparing this for you. Augustine's gift was a diamond necklace worn by a princess from Country X, featuring a unique pink diamond in the center. In the plot, I would feel humiliated because of Gabriella and would never get a chance to receive Augustine's gift, which later became one of Gabriella's collectibles. The necklace was innocent. Why should someone give up tangible benefits for some intangible things? I tossed my hair, smiled at Augustine, and said, "Put it on me." Augustine glanced at Gabriella. Hesitating for a moment, I maintained my smile. leaning closer to his ear and whispering, "Augustine, don't let emotions get in the way. Everyone is watching." The bond between Augustine and me wasn't just emotional. The deepest connection was actually our family's companies. We were a community of interests. Even if Augustine didn't love me, I had 1,000 ways to make him unable to let go of me. Pandering to him was the least cost-effective choice. My intimate interaction with Augustine left Gabriella pale with fear. Perhaps, in her imagination, I should be helplessly crying, watching them be close and becoming the joke of the party. She thought, well, but compared to love, there are many more important relationships between people. Chapter 3. The system was at a loss. AI cannot comprehend the complexities of human emotions. It murmured throughout the night. Then it noticed Augustine's affection for me had increased from 60 to 65. Why? Host. What did you do? I swirled my wine glass, watching Gabriella sitting awkwardly in the corner of the party, and chuckled softly. I just reminded Augustine that I'm not just his fiancé, but also his business partner. I was merely telling him that I wasn't his accessory. We had an equal partnership. See how insignificant love can be when weighed against value. Rather than show him my affection, I preferred to make him understand my worth. At the end of the corridor, Gabriella clung to Augustine, crying, "I'm sorry, Augustine. I didn't mean to. I'm just so sad. I know we broke up, but I just wanted to see what your fiancé was like. Laura is great. If I had a family background like hers, maybe we wouldn't have broken up." In the plot, I would have left, heartbroken after hearing this. But at this moment, I chose to step out from behind the door. The flustered one was Augustine. He suddenly pushed Gabriella away, trying to explain the scene. I didn't question him but disapprovingly glanced at Gabriella. "Miss Lee, I've heard about you. You had a beautiful love with Augustine, but now you two have broken up. Today is my birthday. As my fiancé's ex-girlfriend, you shouldn't be here. The guests here are all family friends of mine. My uncles and aunts have watched Augustine grow up. Did you consider how everyone would view him by bringing you here? If you're curious about me, there are plenty of ways for us to meet." "Why do this?" Gabriella frowned, opened her mouth to explain, but I didn't give her a chance. Continuing to speak to Augustine, "Augustine, this isn't very nice of you. I'm quite unhappy. You should know. My birthday party isn't just a celebration. It's also my first time introducing you to everyone after coming of age. Do I need to explain what this occasion means to you? You're not a child. I'll have Uncle Lou give my family an explanation about this." Having said that, I turned and left directly. Augustine tried to call me back, but I stopped him. "All right. We have more important matters today. We'll discuss some things privately." Chapter 4. The system still didn't understand. Its electronic voice was filled with confusion about humanity. "Host, didn't you say not to use sympathy? Why did you make things clear to Augustine? This isn't using sympathy. What Augustine did was wrong. The one who should be embarrassed shouldn't be me. We are a business union. Whether he loves me or not is irrelevant. What matters is how he conducts himself." Augustine's actions were inappropriate, but I handled the situation in a manner befitting my identity as Miss Jean. Thus, the one who ended up embarrassed was him and Gabriella. At my level, would I still need to care about whether a man loves me? That would be a bit ridiculous. Instead, Augustine should consider how to make me satisfied. After all, I could find someone else like him. The day after the party, Augustine's father personally came to apologize. My family, the Jeans, wouldn't make things too difficult for him, as all I wanted was the Liu family's attitude. Sufficient respect on the surface was enough. "Host, by doing this, will Augustine fall in love with you? That's not important. There are many kinds of love. Rather than being Augustine's wife, I'd prefer to be his father." Tragic plots always revolve around the male and female leads and the female antagonist. You can avoid the initial troubles, but not the ongoing ones. In a luxury store, Gabriella and I both set our sights on the same bag. The sales assistant was in a dilemma. There's only one left in the store. Gabriella's voice was soft, but there was malice hidden in her eyes. "Miss Jean, I saw it first." She smiled slightly. "Augustine said he would get me a gift. I didn't expect to run into Miss Jean. Do you think this bag suits me? This part wasn't in the original plot, but it seemed the birthday party had greatly stimulated Gabriella, prompting her to actively provoke me. I quietly asked the system, "What do you think would happen if I slapped her right now?" System? Please don't do that. I'm scared. Of course. I wouldn't lay a hand on Gabriella. That would be unnecessary. It's just a bag. I pointed at the bag. Wrap it up for Miss Lee, and put it on my tab. The sales assistant looked relieved and hurried to package it. Gabriella and I stood side by side in the store. Her eyes were slightly red, looking like a victim. I shook my head with a smile. "Miss Lee, you're not very bright." She was taken aback. "What do you mean? Literally. What good does it do you to provoke me? Or do you think I would shamelessly confront Augustine?" The logic of the tragic female antagonist is always incomprehensible. It's clear that securing the man is what matters. Yet she insists on making things difficult for the female lead. Sometimes. I truly don't understand where her malice comes from. "Are you mocking me?" she asked, raising her chin defiantly. I leaned in close to her ear, my voice low and seductive. "I'm teaching you, dear." Gabriella jumped back as if shocked, frowning. "What do you mean?" I patted her shoulder and stuffed the bag that the sales assistant handed over into her arms. "A gift for you. I hope you enjoy it." Chapter 5. The system was perplexed. "I don't quite understand you humans." I was sorting through the file my assistant had just sent me, not rushing to answer. The file was about Gabriella. She was born to be a first love. Her parents favored boys over girls. And although she received a good education, she was burdened by her family. She went abroad because her mother believed Gabriella was a rare find. Being overseas might land her a better husband. Now she was back because her brother got into a fight and her mother wanted her to bail him out. Setting all that aside, Gabriella wasn't bad. She had a good education, was caring, and understood social cues. She had many paths she could take but chose one that seemed simple yet was the least secure. Working a regular job comes with benefits, while being in a relationship with a man like Augustine is all about love without any tangible support. The system chimed in, "Although I don't interfere with the host's actions, I'd like to remind you that you need to gain 100 points of affection from Augustine to receive the 60 billion reward." I answered off topic, "Can you detect who currently has the highest affection for me?" The system was silent for a moment. "It's Laura's father." The original host was an only child. Her mother passed away early, and although her father was taciturn, he loved her deeply. Before she got married, she was like a little princess. Girls raised in love sometimes lose themselves. She yearned for pure and flawless love while also wanting to save others. In her eyes, Augustine was someone she needed to endlessly tolerate and rescue. Clearly, Augustine wasn't worthy of her love. You see, if I become Augustine's father, wouldn't my affection score be high too? The system interrupted, physiologically. That assumption is impossible. I waved my hand dismissively. It's just a metaphor. You don't understand. In our human world, aside from biological parents, there are also step-parents. If I had Augustine's lifeline in my grasp, wouldn't he still have to kneel and call me stepmother? I preferred for Augustine to pursue Gabriella rather than someone else. Those with weaknesses are easier to control, and their relationship would allow me to stand on the moral high ground, making the Liu family unconditionally yield to me out of guilt. Everything can be negotiated, including feelings. What mattered more in my relationship with Augustine was the commercial value behind it. That was the foundation binding us. If the bond between people were only emotional, that relationship could easily collapse. Women sometimes confuse interests with feelings, which leads them to be endlessly encroached upon in their living space. When I started rationally discussing interests, my status in Augustine's heart became even more significant. It's like a drunken man who only bullies at home but never dares to raise his voice at work. If I were just Augustine's wife, my tolerance wouldn't earn his respect. Utilizing one's background isn't shameful. In the world of fame and fortune, stepping back only harms oneself. A wealthy young lady sacrificing her dignity for love isn't romantic at all. Chapter 6. Augustine quickly learned about my encounter with Gabriella at the luxury store. When he sought me out to explain, I calmly told him, You should give me the most basic respect. I don't want to have to say this a third time. What do you think, Augustine? A hint of discomfort crossed Augustine's face. I'm sorry. I will clarify things with Gabriella. I didn't respond, pouring myself a cup of tea and leaving him to wait. Men are really easy to understand. Being endlessly gentle and obedient to them is meaningless. Would he cherish love that comes too easily? The best approach is a mix of firmness and sweetness. Are you still mad? Gabriella has her reasons. I interrupted him by handing him a cup of tea. Give it a try? I learned a new way to brew tea. What do you think? Augustine bit his lip and took a sip. It's good. Is that all? Just a casual compliment? I gave him a playful glare. Since your return, I've either been dealing with your issues with Gabriella or listening to you talk about her. Augustine, what's going on with you? Augustine seemed taken aback. It seemed he had never thought about it this way. At that moment, I acted like a genuine charming young lady, leaning in to link my arm with his. You really hurt my feelings. Today, you have to make it up to me, or I'll really get angry. Augustine let out a long breath, accepting my cue. He wasn't a fool. He knew what to do. Today, I'll follow your orders, whatever you want, until you're satisfied. Humph, better be ready. I'm hard to please. Augustine leaned back in his chair, a smile in his eyes. To be fair, Augustine was quite handsome. After all, he was the male lead in a romance novel, a top-tier choice. If I could win him over, I'd gain 60 billion. There's no better deal than that. Augustine kindly accompanied me throughout the day, his credit card movements smooth and natural. I only let go of one bag but gained several times the profit in return. As a gesture of apology, Augustine even agreed to transfer a portion of the Liu family shares to me before our marriage. Feigning excitement, I hugged Augustine. Augustine, you really love me. You make me feel like I'm the most precious thing. Thank you for your love. With someone like Augustine, this was the best response. Don't be surprised. Appreciate their love. I deserve your gifts and understand your intentions. Augustine obviously enjoyed this, and my affection score rose by 5 points. 70, great. Victory is in sight. That evening, Augustine and I watched the fireworks on a private beach. The noble young master personally grilled meat for me while I enjoyed the red wine he prepared. Cheering him on, the starry sea stretched far and wide, and the waves crashing against the rocks created a pleasant sound. I sincerely shared with the system. Being wealthy is wonderful. The system's electronic voice chuckled strangely. Once you succeed, you'll be very rich. Chapter 7. I asked the system if no one had ever succeeded in obtaining the 60 billion reward before. The system replied, no. After a moment, it agreed with me for the first time. Perhaps your approach is correct. My previous hosts all tried hard to make the male lead fall in love with them. But unfortunately, the male lead never truly understood his feelings. Only after the host's death would his affection score skyrocket. I chuckled. Perhaps what's unattainable is the best. Some people simply don't learn to cherish what they have. They only wish to recover it once it's lost. How many regret remedies are there in this world? I posted today's photos on social media. Gabriella didn't like them, but I was sure she saw them. Augustine anxiously called me 3 times. Is something wrong? Augustine shook his head. No. Even if something is wrong, it's not as important as being with you. TSK. In the storyline, Laura never heard Augustine say many nice things until the very end. Humans can be such fools. Augustine stayed with me until late at night, personally driving me home. Before I got out of the car, he asked, Laura, did you have a good time today? I smiled and looked at him, returning the question, what do you think? Before he could speak again, I opened the car door and got out, saying through the window, don't ask me if I'm happy. Ask yourself. It was late at night, but Father Jean was still awake. He was holding a newspaper, which I noticed was upside down. Father Jean pretended to just notice me. You're back? Did you go out with that boy from the Liu family today? I nodded. Didn't you already know? Father Jean coughed. Dad is just concerned about you. I walked over, sat next to him, and leaned my head on his shoulder. Dad, I want to manage the company. Father Jean was taken aback. Did Augustine say this? I was surprised. What does it have to do with him? It's what I want to do. Father Jean looked puzzled. Didn't you always dislike company matters? Thinking they were troublesome? I sighed. My gaze serious. Dad, I've thought it through. One must rely on oneself. According to Father Jin's original plan, if his daughter didn't like managing the company, he would find a capable husband for her, ensuring she would be well taken care of. Unfortunately, if a person cannot control their own fate, no matter how good the arrangements are, things will change. Father Jean certainly didn't put everything on Augustine. He had prepared a trust company and left a large sum of assets, but these were ultimately external possessions. A woman who cannot stand on her own will be consumed by this era. Have you thought it through? This is not a small matter. Once the arrow is shot, there's no turning back. Laura, Dad hopes you can take responsibility for your words. Of course, Dad. I want to steer my own life. Chapter 8. After learning that I was starting to take over the company business, Augustine became somewhat anxious, feeling an inexplicable sense of loss, as if something was slipping out of control. Half jokingly and half seriously, Augustine said, Laura, are you planning to become a strong woman? Is that a bad thing? We'll be a powerful team. I smiled ambiguously. After all, I can't let all the burdens fall on you. Augustine had no reason to stop me. He could only sulk inwardly. The system asked me, aren't you afraid of Augustine losing affection for you? I shrugged. If he loses it, I can just build it back up. There are many things he doesn't want me to do, while Laura has been accommodating him. What's the point of that? The system fell silent, as if it had disconnected. Of course, I had my reasons for doing this. In the storyline, the Jean family faced a serious business crisis, and only with Augustine's help did they manage to get through it. This was also why Laura was so devoted to Augustine. How could a little girl like Laura not fall in love with someone who saves her from peril? Right now, I didn't want to owe Augustine any favors. It was best to prepare in advance, setting a trap for Augustine so that he would come to me seeking help. The Jean family's crisis was simple. The funding chain had broken. In the story, it was mentioned only briefly. Laura was confused and didn't even know where the company's problems lay. After taking over some of the business under Father Jin's guidance, I began investigating the issues. During this time, I didn't remain idle. I still went to see performances and go on dates with Augustine occasionally. The closer we became, the more restless Gabriella grew. She was trying to win him back with their shared past. It was a bit foolish. Feelings between people cannot withstand extravagance. If I were Gabriella, I would take advantage of Augustine's lingering feelings before he was completely indifferent, extracting more benefits from him to break free from the constraints of my family. Unfortunately, she was still living in the past. In the middle of the night, Gabriella, like all malicious supporting characters, sent me a side profile of Augustine and then retracted it. It seemed Augustine was indeed in a bad mood today and had gone to her to vent. I told the system she couldn't help herself. The system asked, but Augustine is with her. Don't you feel angry? Why should I be angry? Augustine's affection for me has risen to 77. Isn't that betrayal? His betrayal was already within my expectations. I was even worried he wouldn't go to her. I ignored Gabriella's provocation and focused on the company affairs. Men might betray me, but my career would not. With money, what man would I not have? Chapter 9. Of course, when I wasn't busy, I'd work on raising Augustine's affection for me. That was my 60 billion. I could forget anyone, but I couldn't forget him. Augustine was balancing between two women while I began representing Father Jean at more business events. After gaining some prominence, I wasn't just the Jean family's daughter. I was also little CEO Jean, the new leader of the Jean group. Like father, like daughter, the younger generation is impressive. I heard little CEO Jean is engaged to the young master of the Liu family. Oh dear, old Liu really has an eye for talent. If he hadn't gotten there first, I would have wanted to introduce my son to little CEO Jean. While there was some flattery involved, I had indeed earned it through my own efforts. Respect and status must be fought for through hard work. The system, observing how much effort I put into managing the company, finally couldn't help but ask, Host, I feel you have many ways to raise affection. Why choose this one? Rational analysis. This is the easiest way. I paused for a moment, then asked back, if I were to leave this world, would Laura come back? The system replied, yes. When you complete the task and the world line changes, the original female lead will replace you and continue living. I rubbed my temples and chuckled, then consider it my way of accumulating virtue. Helping Laura a bit. That weak and naive little girl, after failing miserably in love, feels that life is hopeless. I hope that everything I do can show her that a man's love means nothing. Our journey is among the stars and the sea. In life, there are many more things worth pursuing than love. In the storyline, neither Father Jean nor Augustine ever considered making Laura independent. Laura's tragedy lies in the fact that everyone, under the guise of caring for her, crowded her living space until it was nearly suffocating. If you truly love someone, you should equip her with armor, provide her with weapons, and give her the ability to survive. Instead of treating her like a greenhouse flower that needs protection, too much sunlight will make her wither and die. Chapter 10. Under Father Jin's deliberate delegation of power, I took over most of Jean Group's operations and expanded several new business lines, revitalizing this old company and making it thrive. Although the plot was vague, my analysis over the past few days indicated that the reason Jean Group was on the brink of bankruptcy was due to an auction for a piece of land in the west of the city. Father Jean was very interested in this land and had discussed plans with me. I think this area will be the future city center. If we can secure the operating rights here, we won't have to worry for the next 10 years. I poured cold water on him. If we bid for it, our liquidity will be very tight. Also, Dad, are you so sure this area will develop? Father Jean frowned slightly. I've looked at the city planning. This area, it's isolated. Even if it does develop, it will require a massive investment of manpower, resources, and time. We can certainly buy a piece of the future. But Dad, I pointed at the map. If what you say is true, shouldn't the new routes be planned here? Father Jean paused, his expression changing. Clearly, he hadn't considered this angle. After a long silence, he stood up, patted my shoulder, his eyes slightly moist. Laura, you're doing well now. Your mother would be reassured. I hugged him, silently sighing. Father Jean was a traditional father. He loved Laura but had never thought of letting her stand on her own. His silent paternal love could shield her from storms but had also made Laura fragile and sensitive. Father Jean asked me, it seems the Liu family is also interested in this land. In the plot, the male lead had a waiver. So ultimately, that land marked as a big pit was bought by Jean Group. But would Augustine be so lucky if I forfeited the bidding rights? I smiled at Father Jean, placing my hand on the map. Dad, business is business. Whether the Liu family comes to a decision is their affair. Father Jean was taken aback, then shook his head with a smile. No regrets? What is there to regret? I almost hoped Augustine would go bankrupt so I could become the goddess who saves him, prompting him to kneel and call me mother. Chapter 11. At my request, Jean Group still prepared a plan, pretending to participate in the auction. When we met over the weekend, Augustine jokingly asked, so Laura, are you going to be my competitor this time? I raised an eyebrow at him. What? Are you scared, young Master Liu? Oh, very confident. Aren't you? Fair competition is all about confidence. Augustine clapped for me, ambitious. Just don't come crying to me later asking for mercy. I smirked. Who knows who might be crying? Just as the Jean family couldn't acquire that piece of land, I hoped Augustine couldn't either, but I wanted him to buy it. That way, I could appear in Augustine's life as the savior, just like he did for Laura. The system helped me monitor the dynamics between Augustine and Gabriella, while I developed new projects and worked late. Augustine was celebrating Gabriella's birthday. Gabriella's provocations never ceased. Yet Augustine's affection for me never wavered. Why does Augustine's affection for you remain at 80 while he still takes care of Gabriella behind your back? As an AI, the system couldn't grasp Augustine's behavior, but it wasn't complicated. Just because I liked apples didn't mean I'd never eat bananas. In Augustine's world, Laura and Gabriella were merely apples and bananas. They lacked independent personas, only existing as his accessories. At this moment, his affection for me was higher than for Gabriella, simply because I was more sensible and my position held greater value. Just like in the storyline, Once Augustine took over Gene Group, Laura lost her added value and could be easily played with. Relying solely on a man was the most foolish decision. So from the very start, I never saw Gabriella as a rival. The determination of Augustine's affection for me was not dependent on her. Even without Gabriella, there could be Lee Gabriella or Wang Gabriella. Though we always long for unique love, we must admit that human emotions are not exclusive. Even if I stood on the Titanic's deck with Augustine, singing "My Heart Will Go On," that vow would only hold meaning in the moment. Nothing remains unchanged forever, including love, especially not this impure love. Chapter 12. In a cafe, Gabriella sat across from me. Her expression feigned calm, but the emotions in her eyes betrayed her nervousness. Gabriella tried to sound relaxed. You know this. So why are you still holding on to Augustine? He doesn't love you. I casually stirred my coffee, even sporting a slight smile. How do you know Augustine doesn't love me? Miss Lee, we're engaged. It doesn't seem your place to judge. Gabriella lifted her chin, as if this would give her confidence. The memories between Augustine and me are something you can never penetrate. Oh really? I leaned slightly forward, locking eyes with Gabriella in a confrontational stance. So, will Augustine marry you? You're marrying him based on family background. What's there to talk about? I tilted my head, showing just a hint of confusion. Can my family control everything? Did my dad force Augustine to marry me? Has Augustine ever opposed our engagement? None of that matters. Ultimately, it's because Augustine is willing, not to mention who he loves. At least he loves money more than he loves you. What do you mean? I smiled, retreating to a safer distance. I've said you're not very smart, but not hopelessly foolish either. Don't get angry too quickly. Hear me out first. I've looked into you. You studied under Master in Jia, doing extensive research in electrochemistry and new energy. I've read your published papers. They're insightful. You couldn't write them without spending time in the lab. I looked at Gabriella. So why didn't you continue your studies? Gabriella hesitated, her expression momentarily losing control. Then she laughed bitterly. What's the point of electrochemistry? No experiment can save my brother. I waved my hand, with all due respect. Your brother got what he deserved. Gabriella's eyes sharpened, a fire burning within. Of course. It's easy for you to say. If you were in my place, you wouldn't do any better. If you weren't born into the Gene family, and I were just like you, with unreliable parents and a troublesome brother, what would you do? Once the dam broke, many words naturally flowed out. I only have Augustine left. You have everything else. Why do you still want to compete with me? I shook my head with a smile. Augustine has never been yours. He never intended to marry you. Did he? Are you trying to make me give up? I shook my head again. Not at all. I just want to say, besides Augustine, you have many other choices. I'm very interested in your research projects. If you're willing to continue, I can offer you support. Chapter 13. I told Gabriella that we didn't necessarily have to be adversaries. After all, even if one of us exited the battlefield, it didn't guarantee victory. A woman's prize shouldn't be the love of a man. Even if I don't marry Augustine, is he really going to marry you? His next girlfriend might not be as accommodating as I am, letting you provoke her without retaliating. Gabriella was silent for a long time. I didn't push her. I simply told her that if she thought it through, she could come find me at Gene Group. I can support your experiments and help you get away from your vampire parents. This deal is a win-win for you, isn't it? On the way back, the system asked me, why do you want Gabriella to work for you? Her research skills are indeed impressive, but you could certainly find someone better than her, because she's a supporting character. If my goal were simply to secure 60 billion, there were many faster ways to complete the task, but I wanted to help those I cared about within my means. As a secondary character in a drama, Gabriella was opportunistic and vain. Later on, she would attempt to undermine the female lead for her own advancement. But she wasn't hopeless. She just didn't know how to navigate her path on her own. People often grant the worst boys the greatest tolerance, hoping they will turn over a new leaf. Yet, they are shockingly stingy when it comes to women who stray. But who says women can't make mistakes in life? I offered Gabriella an option outside her usual perspective. Whether she chose to walk that path was up to her. I did what I believed to be right. That night, I received a WeChat message from Gabriella. I want to give it a try, but I can't guarantee I'll help you make money, even if you become my boss. I won't give up on Augustine. That was fine. Illness comes suddenly and leaves slowly. I never expected a love-struck brain to recover overnight. Are you trying to keep Gabriella busy so she won't compete with you for the male lead? Life can be dull. AI critiquing humans. I told the AI that it could never replace humans. What is Augustine's affection level for me? 83. Based on my understanding of human emotions, this level is usually seen between very affectionate couples. It shows that love is inherently unreliable. Chapter 14. The auction proceeded as planned. I and Augustine made 2 bids. Then I smiled and let him have it. Augustine was delighted. And after the event, he earnestly told me, "Laura, I will always remember your kindness." I found myself wanting to laugh at the inopportune moment. In the plot, Laura doted on him, which he took for granted, while here I had set him up, and he was filled with gratitude. I visited the lab for the new project to see Gabriella. She was in her lab coat, wearing blue plastic gloves, her long hair tied in a low ponytail. It was my first time seeing her without makeup, looking serious about her work. When she saw me, she paused her tasks. "Here to check on progress? Just came to see you. Go ahead." Gabriella's phone chimed beside her. A message from Augustine popped up, but she didn't look at it. The system noted that Gabriella hadn't seen Augustine much lately. That was normal. Anyone working for over 10 hours wouldn't have the leisure to placate a man. If they did, it only meant they weren't busy enough. During Gabriella's time working for me, I also began to handle her parents and brother. I staged a scene where Gabriella's parents thought she had offended me, a wealthy girl with alleged connections to the underworld, and they cut ties with her on the spot. Before leaving, they extorted some money from her, claiming it was for her brother's security. That day, Gabriella and I sat in a coffee shop downstairs for a long time. I didn't expect it to be so easy to get rid of them. I played the role of a wicked supporting character. Yeah, pretty simple, right? It was a bit of a hassle for you, but for me and Augustine, it was just a matter of words. I leaned in slightly, my voice low. "So, why do you think he never helped you with this?" Augustine had 1,000 ways to help Gabriella escape her vampire parents, but he chose the simplest route, just giving them money. The system asked me why, recently becoming quite curious. It's simply because money is the least important thing to Augustine. As long as Gabriella can't break free from her parents' control, she will always be dependent on Augustine, a guaranteed profit for him. The system was silent for a moment. "I agree with your point. The male lead's actions are quite unethical." I chuckled. "You're discussing ethics with a male lead from a tragic romance?" Chapter 15. For the first time, Gabriella doubted Augustine's feelings for her. She thought for a long time and asked Augustine out. She asked him, "Augustine, what exactly is our relationship now?" But Augustine refused to answer her directly. They went on dates, held hands, and hugged like intimate lovers. Yet Augustine would never acknowledge this relationship. "Don't ask. If you do, you're just friends." This was how Augustine behaved in the original story as well. He did all sorts of ambiguous things, making Laura sad and turning Gabriella into a pretentious coquette for love. In the end, neither the female lead nor the supporting female character had a good outcome. If Augustine were truly, as the story described, just unclear about his own feelings, he shouldn't have acted this way. He was simply enjoying the competition between 2 women for his attention. When Laura died from her terminal illness, he shifted the blame onto Gabriella. He never considered who kept giving Gabriella chances to provoke Laura. "Do you still love me?" Gabriella asked. Augustine was silent for a long time. "Gabriella, I'm engaged. You know I can't break off the engagement." "Then what about me?" she pressed. "Be sensible, okay?" he replied. Be sensible. Laura had heard this many times in the original storyline. Gabriella drank a bit and stood on the company rooftop, letting the wind blow. "You were right. Augustine doesn't love me. You've won." I couldn't help but chuckle. Won what? Augustine's love? That's worthless to me. Meanwhile, in my mind, The system was reminding me that Augustine's affection for me had dropped to 79. The system's voice was puzzled. Why did the affection score drop? Why indeed? It's because Augustine shifted the blame for Gabriella's departure onto me. In his mind, he parted ways with Gabriella for my sake. Oh, how moved he must be. It's okay. He'll need my help soon enough when things go south. Chapter 16. Gabriella turned her heartbreak into motivation, working day and night in the lab. Soon after, I sent her abroad for further studies, none of which Augustine knew about. Feeling triumphant after acquiring the new land, all of Augustine's thoughts were on the future of the Lou Corporation. After Gabriella left, he still had plenty of female companions around him. See? Even without his first love, there would be new people. The root of the problem always lay with himself. I never cared about these things and focused solely on my career. The more stable the Gene Corporation became, the better Augustine treated me. Now, without me having to intervene, he knew how to maintain my reputation. In public, we were the most loving couple. There were even netizens who started shipping us, calling us the power couple and saying real couples were the best. To this, I could only say that obsessing over anything can only harm you. However, Augustine's affection for me never exceeded 88. See? With someone like Augustine, it's impossible to max out his affection through feelings alone. After 3 years of Gabriella's further studies, during which she returned with new achievements, the Lou Corporation finally, under Augustine's leadership, was on the path to bankruptcy. Oh dear. How sad, the tragic male lead is going bankrupt. In the original story, the Gene family's crisis came swiftly. Now, this crisis was being paid for by young Master Lou. Father Gene asked me, "What are your plans? Are you going to break off the engagement or? How could we break off the engagement? Of course, we're going to help." I had worked so hard to set this up. Breaking off the engagement? Not a chance. Are you ready, Augustine? Your savior is here. When we met again, Augustine looked exhausted. I told him I was willing to take over the Lou family's mess. Augustine was moved. "Vivi, how can I ever thank you?" "Augustine, there's not much I can help with." At this moment, having someone willing to take over his family's mess was already a godsend. Augustine eagerly signed large contracts with me, and I purchased part of the Lou Corporation's shares at a price slightly above market value to stabilize their stock price. Many in our circle said that little CEO Gene took over out of love and that Augustine was lucky. Only I knew how much I had gained. The land that the Lou family bought for development, they had developed half of it. But due to a broken capital chain, it had to be shelved. I also acquired it at a friendly price. Just like in the story, it hadn't become the new city center and remained a barren, desolate place. I overturned Augustine's original plan and transformed it into a high-end resort integrating dining, accommodation, and transportation, far from the hustle and bustle, top-notch service and facilities, and most importantly, an invisible threshold for entry. I also combined Gabriella's new technology here to build a new energy industrial park. Everyone was pleased, including Augustine. After taking over the Lou family's mess, his affection for me finally rose to 95. The system asked me, "What does the host plan to do to gain the last 5 points?" Well, it's time to use his own tactics against him. Chapter 17. I treated Augustine the way he treated Laura. I told him that as the president of Gene Corporation, I had to be responsible to my employees, just as he was to Laura. Since I had acquired shares and invested money, I needed to join Lou Corporation's board of directors. "Augustine, I plan to merge Lou Corporation with Gene Corporation." I looked at him sincerely. "You know, given Lou Corporation's current situation, it's hard to manage. If I keep helping you, the board members might not agree." Of course, Augustine didn't want that. But he had no choice. Faced with bankruptcy or barely hanging on, he chose the latter. In name, I still let Augustine manage the businesses under Lou Corporation. 3 years passed, and he became colleagues with Gabriella. Augustine also found out that Gabriella was working for me, but he overthought it, believing I did it to put his mind at ease. His affection for me increased a bit. In reality, Augustine probably already sensed something was off. But there was no turning back. Now that he had lost everything, he could only deceive himself. telling himself that I loved him. This is a human self-protection mechanism, self-deception. Now, I was Augustine's provider. He really should call me his benefactor. Roles reversed. Augustine's choices weren't much better than Laura's. He began to care about the people around me. After a few arguments, his affection for me actually increased. He had no choice. He couldn't leave me. See, relying solely on love can't hold someone, but interests can. Does Augustine love me? Perhaps not, but he has to. Chapter 18. The system asked me what I planned to do about the remaining affection points. Just leave Augustine with no way out. Now he had lost his company but still maintained his facade. I had set traps all around him, just to give him a final push. Chapter 19. Augustine and his father were taken away for investigation. He would never know that I was the one who reported them. Chapter 20. The Liu family's foundation wasn't clean. Once the walls started to fall, everyone gave it a push. Watching Augustine being investigated, the system was silent for a long time. It asked me, when did you start planning this? From the beginning. If I just let Augustine go bankrupt and then helped him, it wouldn't be enough. So from the moment I took over Gene Corporation, I began investigating Augustine and his father. Augustine was very cautious, but perseverance pays off. For my 60 billion, I could proceed step by step. Host, you're the most terrifying human I've ever seen. You're too kind. In the original storyline, Augustine was even more ruthless than I am. Didn't Laura end up losing her life? At least I didn't plan to take his life. Half a month later, Augustine was sentenced to 13 years. When I went to see him, his hair had already been shaved. Across the glass, I sighed softly. Augustine, there's nothing more I can do now. Behave well in there. I'll help take care of the company and Auntie. For the first time, Augustine cried in front of me. Laura, thank you. I'm sorry. I shook my head. Don't say sorry. There's no need for that between us. While incarcerated, Augustine's affection for me reached its peak after a year. It's normal. After all, I'm his only hope. He would idealize me endlessly to find some comfort. And all of this, I learned from him. In a tragic world, even a piece of candy can make the heroine utterly devoted in the end. It's because the heroine's world is too bitter. A little sweetness is enough to make her go all in. Now, the one experiencing everything is the male lead. He, too, will see me as his lifeline. See? This is the best way to raise affection points. For a man like Augustine, who only blames others and never reflects on himself, being good to him is meaningless. Only when he has no way out and can only see me as his last hope will he love me wholeheartedly. Of course, he knows I might abandon him tomorrow, but he has no choice. He can only idealize me endlessly in his heart. Chapter 21. Outside the prison, Gabriella was waiting for me in the car. 3 years had passed. She looked more and more like a scholar, slim and serious, her eyes calm and deep behind silver-framed glasses. You're not going to tell me you're still waiting for Augustine to be released, are you? I smiled. What do you mean by waiting? We'll talk when he's out. It's not like I'm sitting at the prison gate every day. That's true. For the first time, Gabriella talked to me about the past. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I might still be stuck in a whirlpool, not becoming Dr. Lee. My experiments were very successful. If nothing unexpected happens, I should win an award. I never thought I could get this far. My parents always said that high education is useless for women and that it's better to find a good man to marry. I used to believe that too. But in these past few years, standing at the top on my own, I finally know what happiness is. If a woman's greatest achievement is to find a man to marry, that's just too sad. We looked at each other and smiled. Dr. Lee's life would surely be smooth sailing from now on, walking towards the moon. After settling everything, I left a letter for Laura. At the end of the letter, I wrote a sentence for her. Please, without hesitation, save yourself from the fires of the world. Again and again, endlessly, thousands and tens of thousands of times, I said my final goodbye to the system. I had done everything I needed to do. The rest of life would be up to Laura herself. There is no deity who can save you. Climbing 9,000 steps to the highest point of the temple, the only one enshrined is Yourself. Now, I'm going to enjoy my 60 billion. Allow me to say one thing. Thank you, Augustine.